What's up, people? Joe Winko here, your favorite Hawaiian guy, and here's my next episode of Joe Winko Talk. This is going to be a gloomy episode of Joe Winko Talk, and definitely a personal one, and definitely a gloomy one. So, just wanted to let you all know this isn't going to be much of a happy episode at all, or maybe it is, depending on what way you decide to look at it. But yeah, um, I posted a post about this on my fan page a couple minutes ago, but by the time you guys see this, it'll be longer than that. It was a post saying that I had a dream that I died in Arkansas, and it also triggered me to want to pass a new law in the USA, and I'm going to be explaining that in this episode of Joe Winko Talk. So, as you all know, a long time ago, I almost did actually end up dying in Arkansas, and I'll have a link to me talking about that in the pinned comments because I did an episode of Joe Winko talk about that. Um, so, what happened in this dream, however, it was completely different from how I almost died in Arkansas back in 2015 in real life, and it honestly was much more humane than what would have happened to me in real life, which is kind of the point of this. What happened in the dream was I had a dream that I was still living with my adoptive parents in Wisconsin, and I had a dream that I woke up in my bedroom one morning, and it was the same bedroom that all my old episodes of Joe Winko Talk were done in, with the blue walls and everything. And it didn't seem weird that I was back there. I wasn't thinking, oh, why am I back in my adoptive parents' house? Don't I live down south right now? No, it wasn't. It was like, okay, it's another day at my adoptive parents' house, like usual. And I came downstairs and I saw my adoptive parents, and there were also two other men. They were wearing these white suits, and they were sitting at the table with my adoptive parents. And when I came downstairs, they all looked at me, and then they told me, Joe, come here, please. And I came there and I sat down with them, and I was wondering why the two men in the white suits were there, and I was like, what's going on? Then, my adoptive parents said that these men want to have a word with you. And I looked at them, and then they told me, Joe, we know that you have autism, ADHD, personality disorder, and bipolar disorder, and type 1 diabetes, and that you're suffering with all these mental illnesses and conditions. Because that is absolutely true. I was diagnosed with all those, as I mentioned numerous times, and as I explained that I have a mild form of autism. Um, but yeah, and I told them, yeah, I do have those. What about it? Then they pulled out this like piece of paper and they pulled out this pen and it had like all this stuff listed on it. And then they told me that the USA has passed a new law that gives mentally ill people the option to be euthanized if they consent to it. And what that means, for those of you guys who don't know what euthanize means, when a dog is really sick and is suffering, you have the option to take the dog to the hospital and have them put to sleep. And when the dog is put to sleep, they never wake up again. They die when you put them to sleep, but they die painlessly. That's what it means to be euthanized, when they inject you with something that puts you to sleep first, and then they inject you with something else that kills you, but you die painlessly. That's how it is. They don't do that to humans, not in the USA. You're not allowed to do that to humans in the USA, but in other countries, they do it to humans. Like in the Netherlands, they had a story of a woman who was suffering because she was sexually abused, and which caused mental problems, and she was suffering from it, from the mental problems, and she wanted to be put to sleep. So they have a law that if you're suffering from a mental illness or any kind of condition, really, it doesn't have to be mental illness, and if no treatment's working for you, you can be put to sleep if you agree to it. They don't have that law in the USA, but in Belgium and in other countries in Europe, they do have that law. In this dream, however, they did have the law in the USA. And they gave me the paper and they said, if you sign this paper, we can take you to the hospital and have you euthanized and put to sleep. So then I signed the paper, but then I told them this. As you all know, I really hate the state of Wisconsin, and I don't want to die there at all. there's no way I would ever want to die in Wisconsin and be buried in Wisconsin. And I said that. I said, okay, I'll be euthanized, but I don't want to die in Wisconsin because I hate Wisconsin. And there's too many bad memories here, and I don't want to die here. And then they looked at me and they told me, very well then. So after I signed the document, one of them pulled out their cell phone and they called a number. Next thing I know, there's this taxi outside, and they told me, what state do you want us to take you to? And then the first thing that came to my mind was Arkansas, because that was the state that I almost died in, as I explained in my episode of Joe Winko Talk. So I told them, take me to Arkansas then, and they said, okay, we'll take you to Arkansas. So I sat in the back seat of the taxi, and this was in the morning time, and I actually have been to Arkansas in real life because a stranger from Craigslist took me there. I plan on doing an episode of Joe Winko Talk about that. The weird thing was, I recognized the whole entire trip. I recognized crossing the state line of Wisconsin and Illinois. I recognized the extremely long drive down Interstate 57 from Chicago to Missouri. I even recognized crossing the Mississippi River at the state line of Illinois and Missouri, and then crossing into Arkansas, and I remember seeing the blue sign that said, "Welcome to Arkansas." It looked the exact same way it did as when I went to Arkansas in real life. I also remember the first town in Arkansas that we passed through. It was nighttime by the time we got there. And the town that we drove through in Arkansas, it looked exactly like it did when I went there, except it was nighttime instead of daytime. And everything looked so real and everything. Another thing I should mention about this was I slept in for a really, really, really long time last night, and last night is when I had the stream. I went to bed around 5 p.m. last night, and I woke up at 1 p.m. the next day. So that's longer than 12 hours, definitely. But to get to Arkansas, from Wisconsin to Arkansas, that's a 12-hour drive, and I was asleep longer than that. So coincidence? I think not. It wasn't like we just got there right away. I remember the whole drive, and I remember the long drive and everything, and I was sitting in the back seat of the taxi when they drove me down to the hospital in Arkansas, because that's where they were going to take me to be euthanized. We finally got to the hospital. I don't really remember what the building itself looked like, but I remember it was surrounded by these huge fields. It looked like some hospital out in the middle of nowhere. These huge green grass fields, because eastern Arkansas is part of the Mississippi Delta, so that's why it has those fields, because the ground is really lush and everything. And I remember I got out of the taxi and we walked inside. The hallway of the hospital was really dark, and I couldn't see any. I could see because it was dimly lit, but it was really dark. A lot like the hospital from the movie Halloween 2 from 1981. That's what it looked like. They walked me down the hallway, and we finally got to this one hospital room with a hospital bed in it. And it was really brightly lit, and it had white tile walls and everything, and the nurses were all inside. And it seemed like the nurses were trying to avoid eye contact with me, because I was looking at all of them and they were all looking away from me and everything. None of them wanted to look me in the eye at all. And I think it was because they knew that they were going to be putting me to sleep, and that they were nervous about that they didn't want to look at me in the eye and see my eyes at all, because it would haunt them or something. So I understood that. So I remember that the hospital room that I was in, it was very cold. That's one thing I really remember, that the hospital room was very, very cold, and it was really chilling and really cold. I also remember that there was a radio on a counter in a hospital room, and they had the radio on, and it was playing this song. Cruel Summer by Bananarama. This song. That song, if you've seen my Arkansas episode of Joe Winko Talk, this song always reminded me of the time I almost died in Arkansas, because of lyrics and everything. So, I thought it was a weird coincidence that they had that song playing on the radio when I actually was going to die in Arkansas. So, after that, I laid down in the hospital bed, and there was IVs and tubes and everything. The nurse came by, she felt my arm, and then she felt a vein in my arm, and she put the IV into my arm, and then, like, it was attached to a tube, and I was laying there in the hospital bed, and I heard nothing but the song Cruel Summer by Bananarama playing on the radio, sitting on the counter next to me. Then, after a while, I just felt myself get really tired, and I was just laying there relaxing the whole entire time. I was crying, though, while that was all happening, cause like it wouldn't be like it wouldn't be like, oh yay, I'm going to die now. No, it wouldn't. That wasn't. It's not something you would be happy about, really. But I did agree to it, and I was ready for it. So yeah, I was kind of crying for it, really, because it was kind of tragic, really, that I don't belong in this world at all, and that now I was finally going to die, but it wasn't too bad, really. And I was laying in the hospital bed, and eventually what happened is, um, everything went black, and everything in my sight started to fade, and everything went quiet then. And then the last thing I remember hearing before I woke up was waves crashing against a shore. You know that sound when you're at the beach and you hear waves crashing on a shore? I understood then that I was in heaven then, because I actually did an episode of Joe Winko Talk about the afterlife, because I did have a dream that I died and went to heaven then, and it was a huge beach that does not look like any kind of beach I ever seen in real life. Then, next thing I knew, I woke up in this bedroom, and I was still alive, and it was all just a dream then. But then, after that happened, I thought of something then. I thought that, and you know, I actually did think about this before, but I just never thought about it this much until now. I actually want to get a law passed like that gives mentally ill people who are suffering with mental illness the option to be put to sleep. Because in other countries in Europe, they actually do have that option. If you're like suffering with an incurable mental illness, you have to go through counseling because they have to make sure it seriously is incurable and that it can't be managed at all. And I actually already have been through years of counseling, so I would definitely qualify for euthanasia. I think that's what it is. I'll actually have a link to the news story about that in the pinned comments. But I have to figure out exactly what I need to do to figure out how to get this law passed in the USA that gives mentally ill people the option to be put to sleep. Obviously, it does have to have a few guidelines, because it can't just be like anyone can be put to sleep when they want to. Because if everyone is allowed to be put to sleep, gosh, we would go extinct then. So only if someone has like a mental illness that's incurable, that they tried managing and tried handling, but it's not doing them any good, only then they can be put to sleep. And there has to be guidelines and restrictions, like only 1 million people are allowed to be put to sleep per year. Because that is a big number, really, but when you think about how many people are living in the USA, there's 323.1 million people living in the USA, and I'm pretty sure that that quota would not fill up every single year, because most people do not want to die at all. But for the people with the mental illnesses who are suffering and do want to die, they should be given that option, and they shouldn't have to commit suicide at all, because suicide's a horrible thing to put yourself through. Like having to slash your wrist or having to hang yourself, and it might not work, and then they might end up with more problems, and then they'll be suffering even more. Like, for example, when I almost died in Arkansas back in 2015, in real life, What was going on was my adoptive mother was making me keep a job that I couldn't stand at all, and she told me she'd kick me out if I quit the job. And if I became homeless, I would have no access to get my insulin, and I'm a type 1 diabetic, and then I would have ended up dying with no insulin. And so I posted an ad on Craigslist saying that I wanted someone to take me to Arkansas. I mean, that I wanted to run away forever so I can run away from my adoptive mother, and so she never knows what happens to me at all, and so she's stuck with that for the rest of her life. And so I could escape because I wasn't happy in my life at all and there was nothing I could do to change it. And you know, if someone's miserable and unhappy with their lives and there's nothing that they should do to change it, then they just shouldn't be here then. They shouldn't be here suffering. So that's why I want to get this law passed so they have that option. And how Arkansas that got caught up in all that, when I posted that ad on Craigslist, the guy said that he would take me to Arkansas. And what I thought was going to happen was he was going to take me down to Arkansas where I wander around aimlessly until I collapse and die of either dehydration or diabetic ketoacidosis, because that's how a diabetic person dies if they have no insulin. That'd be a pretty fucked up way of dying. It wouldn't be that bad, but it'd be a pretty fucked up way. I would much rather go to a comfortable hospital bed, it doesn't matter if it's cold or not, and just be put to sleep instead of wandering around some random field out in the middle of nowhere waiting for diabetes to kill me. Because that would not be fun at all. I already done a whole episode of exactly all the stuff I would go through if that actually happened. Like, it wouldn't be too bad, but it would be very unpleasant. So that's why I want to get that law passed. So that I want the USA to pass that law that gives mentally ill people the option to be put to sleep. So I'm looking for people to help me get that law passed, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it. Like, there has to be regulations with the law so it doesn't get too out of hand. Like, if 10 people have to petition for you not to be put to sleep in order for them not to be put to sleep, and trust me, I definitely wouldn't have 10 people signing for me not to be put to sleep, so that wouldn't be a problem for me at all, but just so people don't get sad because they had one of their relatives put to sleep who they loved and cared about. So yeah, that's why I want to have some regulations added to the law too. And that's basically it for this episode, so I'm going to be trying to figure that out. And if anyone has any, like, advice or any, like, things I should know about getting that law passed or important stuff I should know about how to get that law passed, please type them in the comments, because that'd really be appreciated. And also, you can type what you thought about all this, really. And anything else that could help me get this law passed. I'm trying to figure out what I should call the law, too. I'm thinking of either calling it Joe Winko's Law, the Grim Reaper Law, or the Right to Die. Not sure which name I should call it yet, but I'm pretty sure you guys could vote on that in the comments. And yeah, so please comment and share your thoughts. And that's basically it for this episode of Joe Winko Talk. So, don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. So that's it. Peace out, people.